Picture this. It's December 1917, and a man sits in a dimly lit office in Petrograd, signing what would become one of history's most terrifying documents. With a single stroke of his pen, Vladimir Lenin unleashes a force so brutal, so merciless, that it would make the Tsar's secret police look like Sunday school teachers. This is the birth of the Cheka. What you're about to discover will shock you to your core. The story of Lenin's secret police, the Cheka, is not just another historical tale. It's a horrifying glimpse into how quickly a revolution can devour its own children. By the end of this video, you'll understand why even hardened revolutionaries whispered their name in terror. Before we dive into this nightmare, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because stories like this remind us why we must never forget the darkest chapters of human history. Now, let me take you back to a time when knocking on your door at midnight could mean you'd never see daylight again. The year is 1917. Russia is bleeding from 3 years of devastating war. The Tsar has fallen, and Lenin's Bolsheviks have seized power in a violent coup. But Lenin faces a terrifying reality. Enemies surround him from every direction. Counter-revolutionaries, foreign armies, and even former allies are plotting his downfall. His solution: create the ultimate weapon of terror. On December 20th, 1917, Lenin signs the decree establishing the Orusian Extraordinary Commission for Combating Counter-Revolution and Sabotage, known by its Russian acronym, Cheka, at its head. He places a man whose very name would become synonymous with ruthless brutality, Felix Dzerzhinsky. This Polish revolutionary possessed a chilling combination of fanatical loyalty and utter ruthlessness. Dzerzhinsky had spent years in Tsarist prisons, and now he would repay that suffering 1,000-fold. He believed that terror was not just a tool, it was a sacred duty. "We stand for organized terror," he declared coldly. Terror is an absolute necessity during times of revolution. These weren't empty words. They were a promise of the hell that was about to be unleashed. The Cheka began with just 23 operatives. Within months, it would grow into a monstrous organization with over 200,000 agents spread across the crumbling Russian Empire. But numbers alone don't tell the story of their power. What made the Cheka truly terrifying was their unlimited authority. They could arrest, interrogate, and execute anyone without trial, without evidence, without mercy. Unlike the Tsar's secret police, who at least maintained some pretense of legality, the Cheka operated in a legal vacuum. They answered to no court, no law, no authority, except Lenin himself. Their headquarters at the Lubyanka became a name whispered in terror throughout Russia. Those who entered its doors rarely emerged the same, if they emerged at all. The Cheka's methods were designed to break not just bodies, but souls. They perfected techniques that would later be adopted by secret police forces around the world. Sleep deprivation, psychological torture, threats against family members. These became their standard tools. But when subtlety failed, they turned to methods so brutal that even their own agents sometimes refused to carry them out. One former Cheka agent later wrote, "We shot people for sport. We had competitions to see who could kill the most in a single day." Mass executions became routine. In some cities, they would line up prisoners in courtyards and mow them down with machine guns. The lucky ones died quickly. Others faced prolonged torments that I cannot describe in detail on this platform. The Red Terror officially began in September 1918, following an assassination attempt on Lenin, but in reality, it had been building for months. Now, with Lenin wounded and the Bolsheviks facing enemies on all sides, Dzerzhinsky received carte blanche to unleash hell. "We must encourage the energy and mass nature of the terror," Lenin commanded from his hospital bed. What followed was systematic slaughter on an industrial scale. The Cheka didn't just target obvious enemies, they went after entire social classes. Former nobles, priests, wealthy peasants, intellectuals, even workers who dared to strike, all became targets. Being accused was tantamount to being condemned. Evidence was optional. Suspicion was sufficient. In Petrograd alone, over 800 people were executed in a single night. In the provinces, local Cheka units competed to see who could demonstrate the most revolutionary zeal. They created portable execution chambers, railway cars equipped with soundproofing and drainage systems for easy cleanup after mass killings. The revolution was literally consuming itself. But the Cheka's reach extended far beyond simple executions. They pioneered the use of hostages as a weapon of terror. The entire families would be arrested for the crimes of one member. Children as young as 12 were held responsible for their parents' counter-revolutionary activities. The message was clear. Opposition to the Bolsheviks would bring consequences beyond your worst nightmares. The psychological impact was devastating. People began to turn on their neighbors, their friends, even their families. Denunciation became a survival strategy. The Cheka encouraged this paranoia, knowing that a society that couldn't trust itself could never organize effective resistance. They were creating something new in human history, a state built entirely on fear. One of the most chilling aspects of the Cheka was how they transformed ordinary people into monsters. Many of their operatives were workers and peasants who had initially supported the revolution out of hope for a better life. But the organization's culture of violence and paranoia corrupted them completely. They became addicted to the power of life and death over their fellow citizens. The numbers are staggering and disputed. But conservative estimates suggest that during the peak years of the Red Terror, the Cheka executed between 50,000 to 200,000 people. But raw numbers can't capture the true horror. The midnight arrests, the families destroyed, the children orphaned, the communities terrorized into submission. An entire society was traumatized. Even hardened revolutionaries began to question what they had created. Some Bolshevik leaders privately expressed horror at the Cheka's methods. But by then, it was too late. The organization had become indispensable to the regime's survival. Lenin himself admitted that without the Cheka, the Bolsheviks would have lasted not even 2 months in power. The international community watched in horror as reports of the Red Terror leaked out of Russia. But the world was exhausted from the Great War and focused on its own recovery. The few voices that raised alarms were dismissed as anti-Bolshevik propaganda. The Cheka's victims found themselves alone, abandoned by a world that preferred not to see their suffering. By 1921, even Lenin began to realize that the Cheka had become a monster beyond his control. The organization had developed its own culture, its own interests, its own reasons for existence beyond the original revolutionary goals. Attempts to rein them in were met with resistance from within the organization itself. The servant had become the master. The Cheka was officially disbanded in 1922, replaced by the GPU, then the NKVD, then the KGB, but the essential structure remained the same. A secret police force with unlimited power over life and death. The template that Dzerzhinsky and his agents created would be copied by totalitarian regimes around the world. From Nazi Germany to Communist China to countless dictatorships, the legacy of the Red Terror extends far beyond Russia's borders. It demonstrated how quickly a revolution, claiming to fight for justice, could transform into a system of unprecedented oppression. It showed how ordinary people could be turned into instruments of terror, and how fear could be weaponized to control entire populations. These lessons remain chillingly relevant today. What makes this story even more tragic is that many of those who created the Cheka would eventually become its victims. During Stalin's purges of the 1930s, numerous former Cheka operatives were arrested, tortured, and executed by the very organization they had helped build. The revolution truly did devour its own children, just as some had predicted from the beginning. Today, the Lubyanka still stands in Moscow, now housing the FSB, the modern successor to the Cheka. Plaques commemorate some victims, but the full story of what happened there remains largely untold in Russia. For many, the Red Terror is still too dangerous a subject to examine fully. The ghosts of Dzerzhinsky's victims continue to haunt the corridors of power. The story of the Cheka serves as a stark warning about the fragility of human rights and the speed with which civilized society can collapse into barbarity. It reminds us that good intentions can lead to evil outcomes, when power is concentrated in the hands of those who believe the ends justify any means. Democracy and rule of law exist precisely to prevent such horrors. As we've seen in this horrifying journey through one of history's darkest chapters, the Red Terror wasn't just about Lenin or Russia. It was about human nature itself, and what happens when ideology overrides humanity. If this story has opened your eyes to the importance of protecting democratic values and human rights, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more eye-opening historical content. Share this video with others who need to understand these crucial lessons from history. Hit that like button if you believe. We must never forget the victims of the Red Terror. And remember, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And stories like this show us exactly what we're protecting ourselves against.